All right. Okay, cool. All right. Live there. All right, now we're going to try to find our link. We're going to do our best. We're going to find our link. We found it once before. We can do it again. We can find that link. It's not hard. We'll do it. We did it again. All right, we'll do it one more time. Okay. Keep going. Keep going. Settings, my channel. City, profile. Why can I not? There it is. Hell yeah. Copy that motherfucking link. We copied that link. We did it. Okay. Now, we're going to go to the Discord. We're going to go post that link into the live deck building discussion. That's discussion. We'll put it in general. Paste. Fuck. Now we're gonna grab that Instagram post. Okay, cool. Nobody's here yet. We got time. We got time. We got time. Take a screenshot. Copy that. Alright. Clear that. Alright, that's not as vibe. That's not as vibey as we were hoping. We're gonna... something a little chiller. Something a little more relaxed. Alright. Alright. No. Hopefully that'll come up with my link. Hell yeah! Fantastic. Got that going. Now we're gonna head over to Rip Pull Repeats Discord for the promote yourself. Paste. Add. That. Okay, cool. And then we're live there. Fantastic. We're live there. Been live a few minutes. Still nobody hanging out. That's fine. We just got set up. We put our posts out. We put one on Instagram. Yeah, we put one on Instagram. We're all good. All right, and we're live. So, let's start the TikTok. Going live on TikTok. Is not approved for... Oh, wrong computer. Crutcher, Rogue Thar Creatures. Alright, hopefully we can go live. Alright, we're live on TikTok. Fantastic. And we're live somewhere else. Cool. Alright, let's get down to business. Put that there. Open up TikTok. Open up our deck builder. There's our deck builder. Minute, check our overlays. We are good on the big one, and we're good on the small one. Fantastic. Okay. Great. Great, great. Okay. Hello everyone, I am BGM. I'm a video editor and Magic the Gathering content creator on multiple platforms, and on lives we do live deck building. Our commander tonight is Rorik Thar. Rorik Thar is a 6-mana Gruul Ogre Warrior, and this Vigilant reaching 6/6 says that it has to attack each combat if able, and whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Rorik Thar deals 6 damage to them. 6 is a pretty hefty chunk of burn in a commander game. You get hit by 8 of these and you're dead. Or is it 7? It's 7. You get hit by 7 of these triggers from 40 life and you're dead. Rorik Thar is great. We've seen a lot of Rorik Thar decks. Rorik Thar is just a Gruul creatures deck. Big stompy, big punishing triggers from Rorik Thar. He's a good time, and Spellslinger decks hate playing against him because he can kill them outright. Doesn't let them storm off because it kills them first. Rorik Thar's a good time. If you have any suggestions of cards that you would put into a Rorik Thar deck, I want to know about them. Put them in the comment section. If I pull them up over here, it'll be put into a Moxfield deck list that everybody can see by checking out the link tree. Alright, so I pulled out some cards that I would put into Rorik Thar. So I'm going to talk about this here, Garruk's Horde. Garruk's Horde is a bulk creature. It's cheap. It's 60 cents. It's a 7-mana mono green creature. And this thing has trample and lets you play the top card of your library, revealed. And you may cast the top card of your library if it's a creature. Rorik Thar, our commander tonight, cares a lot about creatures. This thing cares about creatures. It gives us a form of advantage by running this thing. It's kind of like card advantage because we can cast creatures off the top. He's a good time. He's also 60 cents, and he's a big creature. Do you think Borborygmos Enraged is a good commander? So Borborygmos, in my personal opinion, is hardcore, and I always lose to Borborygmos every time I sit across from him. Just the style of Borborygmos the Enraged, the way that this card encourages you to build a commander deck, it's still super combo-y, it's still hella fast. This thing is a trampoline 7/6 for 7 mana in Gruul colors, and whenever this thing deals combat damage to a player, reveal the top 3 cards of your library, put all land cards revealed this way into your hand, and then shuffle. And put the rest into your graveyard. Not shuffle, I'm just so used to seeing shuffle at the end of that. This thing, the real spice about Borborygmos is this activated ability. He can sacrifice a card at instant speed, and you can just bolt something. You can bolt something at instant speed for 3 mana. There are a lot of ways. I've seen a Borborygmos deck, and I think it's leaning heavily towards CEDH at this point, that deck, because it just searches up a ton of lands. He puts them in either his graveyard or his hand, or he finds a way to get them back in his hand, and he just burns the table. He runs damage multipliers. Borborygmos is still a crazy-ass commander, but it needs to be built for that activated ability to be super impactful, in my opinion. It's got a lot of burn attached to it, and it's also at instant speed. The thing that really fucking gets me about Borbor over here is his activated ability can be done in instant speed. It's real good. All you gotta do is find lands and put them in your hand. Have you mentioned Rubble Hulk? No, we haven't talked about Rubble Hulk. Hey everybody, I'm BGM, and I'm an MTG content creator, and we're doing live deck building. If you have a suggestion for cards you would slam into Rorik Thar as your commander, put them in the comments. This is Rubble Hulk. It's a 6-mana Gruul elemental with star power toughness, and its power toughness are equal to the number of lands you control. It's also got Blood Rush, which is an activated ability that we can activate from our hand to discard this thing, and target creature gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of lands you got. I like it quite a bit. We're going to be ramping heavy, because we're in Gruul colors, and all we want to do is cast creatures. I like this thing a lot. I imagine it's very powerful in a landfall matters strategy, or in just a lands matter strategy. You want to have a bunch of them. You want to make this guy big, and if you want to pump up your creature to make it silly, you want to have this thing in your hand, and you all still want to have a bunch of lands on the field too, to make that ability more impactful. It's cool. I also like that the art is pretty rad, and also it's 50 cents. We love a budget card here. It looks like this version was printed in, I want to say that's the same set of precons as Atraxa. 60-cent little rare there. I like it. I likes it a lot. Frost Ace says you're here to suggest Ansrag. We saw Ansrag yesterday, right? Ansrag is rad. Ansrag is a little god mole. He's a god mole. He's 4 mana. He's in our colors of red and green today. And this thing is an 8/4, and it says when this thing becomes blocked, untap each creature you control and you get an additional combat step. and you can activate this thing for 7 mana and say that it has to be blocked. The way, all right, so let's break it down, right? So 4 mana gets you an 8/4. 4 mana, 8/4, that's legendary and can go in the command zone. That's Coconuts. An Anzrag Voltron deck alone on this guy's little stat block it's crazy. It's so good. Also, it can force people to block him. He's already big in the front portion. He gives you multiple combats when he gets blocked. If you're running him in the command zone, I imagine that's where he's the spiciest. Because that will, if you're running him as your commander and he's dealing commander damage as an 8/4, people have to block that anyway or they lose the game. So this thing in the command zone I think would be absolutely disgusting, especially when you get multiple combats off it. Great card. It's from the Murders of Karlov Manor set, and it's $5. Cool suggestion, Frostace. We're still here. Yeah, Lando, we're still here. Good to see you too, Lando. Kiki's the badass. Good to see you. You say Grand Warlord Rada. Grand, is that Butch Rada? My favorite Rada is Butch Rada. Let's talk about a Grand Warlord Rada. Uh-oh. Come on. Come on, TikTok, you can do it. Dang it. Alright, yeah, this is Butch Rada. I like Butch Rada the best. This thing was printed in the Dominaria set that came out about 6 years ago. It's a 4-mana Gruul card. It's an elf warrior, but it's got haste. It's a 3/4, and whenever one or more creatures you control attack, add that much in any combination of Gruul. Until end of turn, you don't lose this mana, steps and phases end. 10 out of 10. When Rada came out, she's kind of like a go-wide Gruul strategy. She gives you mana at 4. She has haste herself, so she can produce the mana the turn she comes out because she can attack. She has a relevant body in the form of a 3/4. She's quite fun. I like her a bit. She's $1.50, and I'm not going to lie, guys. I kind of expected her to be less. I expected Rada to be about 50 cents. I kind of imagined Rada's like just a playable bulk card in her colors. She's very cool. She is my favorite Rada. There are a ton of other Radas nowadays. Did you guys see the new not reprints, the new designs for Rada that came out during the Phyrexian arc? Jeremiah Holland says a Scrambleverse. Scrambleverse. Hey everybody, thank you guys so much. I see that we finally got Pup Maestro and Frostace over on Twitch. Thank you guys so much for helping support me on Twitch. We're trying to get some traction there. If you guys would like to help me beat Rip Pull Repeat, please head on over to Twitch and give me a follow. This is Scrambleverse. It's an 8-mana mono red card, and it's a little bit frustrating because for each non-land permanent, choose a player at random, and that player gets the thing. And do this for each permanent that is chosen until they're all chosen, and then you untap all the permanents. This card is a little bit of a bummer because it kind of negates your board state. It scrambles it up. It can give it to anybody. This card might just hurt you. It's, I don't know. It's not one of my favorites. I feel like it takes a long time to resolve as well. Like, this feels like a 5-minute spell. For each non-land permanent, choose a player at random. Yeah, that's going to require quite a few dice rolls. Especially if there's, like, oodles and boodles of tokens out there. This thing's going to be quite mean. In this Rurik Thar deck, I definitely wouldn't run it because this thing will cost us 6 life off the Rurik Thar trigger. But if your goal is to frustrate your friends and your other people you're playing Commander with, run Scrambleverse. This will definitely get you some eye rolls in size. I think it would. Yeah, it's cool. It's only $2, so you can upset your friends for $2. And 8 mana in mono red. Alright, our next suggestion is coming in from Pup, who says an Enduring Courage. Enduring Courage, suggested by Pup over on Twitch, is this, like, red dog. Hey, Pup suggested a dog glimmer card. That's silly. Alright, so this 4-mana red enchantment creature glimmer from Duskmourn is wonderful, because this says whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +2/+0 and gains haste. But, if you want to get rid of this thing to stop the creatures from getting the very meaningful keyword haste, you gotta kill this thing twice. Because when it dies, if it was a creature, it comes back as not a creature. I like this thing a lot. He's $3. He's a relatively new card because he's from Duskmourn, and he's a good time. I really enjoy the Glimmer cycle of cards from Duskmourn. They're all impactful, and they all, well, not all the Glimmers, but all the Enduring cycle. The Enduring cycle of cards from Duskmourn, this 5 Glimmer animals, they all have to be killed twice because when they die as a creature, they come back as a not a creature. Yeah, they're rad. They're cool. This one's super meaningful. Haste is sometimes a game-winning keyword. AMS says a Goblin and Narcomancer. Goblin and Narcomancer. Goblin and Narcomancer is... Okay, this thing's cool. I vibe hard. This thing's $1.50. It's 2 mana in Gruul colors. It's a Goblin Shaman, and each spell that's red and green costs 1 less to cast. I like this thing a lot. We're in Gruul colors. We care about creatures. This thing will make all of our creatures cheaper because it's in our colors. I like this thing a lot. This thing's $1.50. It's very aggressive. And instead of just being like a 2-mana mana dork that taps for a singular mana, if we cast multiple things, we're actually getting multiple mana off this thing in a singular turn if we cast a bunch of creature spells. We got a bunch of little guys. We're going to save oodles and boodles mana with this Goblin Narcomancer. He's rad. Very cool suggestion. Thank you, AMS. Most of what you would put in Alexios has a place here. Yeah, Joseph Howell, I bet it would. As long as they're creatures. Worldfire would be dope in this as a spaceman's. Alright, I'm about to hate on some Worldfire. Alright, so I don't like Worldfire. Worldfire makes me a little bit frustrated because this 9-mana mono red sorcery says that you exile all permanents. Lands are permanents. Hey, lands are permanents. And yeah, you exile all cards from all hands and graveyards. Each player's life total becomes 1, and ain't nobody got lands, and ain't nobody got hands. So this card really slows down a game, and I don't like it for that reason. Also, another reason I don't like it is that it invalidates almost every other decision prior to, like, this thing. Because it's getting rid of the board, it's getting rid of hands, it's getting rid of graveyards. Everybody's life total is 1, and if you see this thing in a deck, usually... If you see this thing, Worldfire, in a deck, usually the deck has a way to kill you guys directly after. It's crazy. Yeah, I don't like it. I don't like it. It's how what I have to say. Also, it's $30. You can upset your friends with this for 30 whole American dollars. Or you can do it for 87 cents at printingproxies.com. Scuttling Doom Engine is great, says Aleek Steven. Scuttling Doom Engine. Scuttling Doom Engine is not a card I'm familiar with, but it is very fun to say. Who recognize... Guys, I have no idea what that set symbol is. Sound off in the chat if you know what set symbol that is. This is a 6-mana colorless artifact construct 6/6, and it can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. And when this thing dies, it deals 6 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. It's 50 cents. It's got a fun death trigger. We were looking at Zira, the Golden Sting, last night, and this thing would be a very cool thing to put in there because we want to kill cards in that deck, and this thing's got a very fun death trigger. It deals 6 damage to target opponent or planeswalker. We can get rid of planeswalkers. 6 damage is also a relevant amount of damage. It's the damage we do off the Ruric Thar triggers when our opponents cast not creature spells. It's great. I think we only need to hit people with like 7 or 8 of Ruric Thar's triggers to kill them outright. It's great. This thing's cool. It is a creature. It's in an unrestricted color identity of colorless. It has a meaningful death trigger, and it can't be blocked by little boys. So that's cool. I like it a lot. It can't be blocked. It has a relevant body. I wish we could slam some keywords on it to make it even spicier. Do not cast copies of instants and sorceries. Bad, bad. Yeah, oops, all creatures. Yes, it is definitely oops, all creatures. And we hope everybody else is playing creatures or they're just not gonna hang out for very long. Roxanne Starfall Savant. So Roxanne is quite cool. So Roxanne Starfall Savant. I got actually hosed by Roxanne last weekend. Someone built Roxanne in my playgroup, and they built it with all the damage doublers. So when Roxanne gets her trigger, which whenever she enters the battlefield or attacks, you create a tapped colorless artifact named Meteorite, and when the Meteorite enters, it deals 2 damage to any target. It also taps for mana. But Roxanne's static ability says that whenever you tap an artifact token for mana, you make additional mana. She does work on treasures too. So she's great, y'all. She makes insane amounts of mana, and she puts them into big X spells. And then she runs a bunch of damage stacking effects like damage doublers, damage triplers, and that way her Meteorite triggers are crazy potent. They're really good. This commander is so good. People have been hot on Roxanne, this $2 5-mana Gruul card, since she got spoiled in Outlaws of Thunder Junction. She's great. She's super good. I was highly skeptical because, I don't know, it didn't excite me when I first saw it. But then I got absolutely handed my ass by this cat druid. It's great, y'all. You should give it a try. It's only $2. That's not a bad price for that. Cinder Vines. Okay, so Frost Ace says Cinder Vines. Y'all be telling me some not creature spells in our Rurik Thar deck. Like, y'all really want to be taking 6 damage like that. This is a 2-mana Gruul enchantment for 50 cents, and whenever an opponent casts a non-creature spell, Cinder Vines deals 1 damage to them. 10 out of 10 would play this. It's a lot like our commander, but little. Pay 1 mana, sacrifice Cinder Vines, destroy an artifact or enchantment. It deals 2 damage to the permanent's controller. I love this. I love this thing a lot, actually. I could only love it more for our Rurik Thar deck if it was in fact a creature, but it is not. So this thing has a fun little trigger that whenever we're punishing people for non-creature spells with Rurik Thar or Cinder Vines, hell yeah, we're definitely gonna run the Cinder Vines. It's only 50 cents. It's a little bit of like our commander, and also, if we cast our commander and we'd rather do more damage, we can then activate this thing at instant speed to remove things, right? We can do it during our opponent's turn. We can pay 1 mana. We can sack it. We can get rid of artifacts and enchantments. It's a great thing. Great card. Also budget card. The art is very cool. Thank you for the suggestion. Dalbus G says a Helm of Awakening. Helm of Awakening. Have we seen a Helm of Awakening? I don't think we've seen this card before. It's a 2-mana $1 artifact that says spells cost 1 less to cast. Period. Full stop. Spells cost 1 less to cast. This is nice. This is a very nice card. I feel like it's a group hug card. I like it a lot. I also like that it's $1. The artwork is a little bit confusing, but I think it's like a guy's head, and you peel back the skin and see a robot. It's a very cool card. I like it. It's fair and balanced. And it'll make our opponents like us. Cool suggestion. Who put that in here? Dalbus G! Dalbus G, your vibes are good. Thank you for your suggestion. Alright, so Joseph says Solfim. Solfim crazy. So this thing, it affects damage. It's a legendary 4-drop, mono red Phyrexian Horror. It's a 5/4. It's got an activated ability that lets us pay 3 mana, discard 2 cards, and put an indestructible counter on it, or we can pay 4 life and Phyrexian mana. This thing says, though, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. So instead of 6 life on non-creature spells, we have Solfim on the battlefield. They have to pay 12 life per non-creature spell. They're just gonna die. This thing makes Rurik Thar's triggers absolutely lethal almost immediately. 6 life. You can pay 6 life, I don't know, 3 or 4 times pretty comfortably in a commander game. You can only pay 12 life comfortably once. And then you're kind of panicking. This thing's very cool. Also, something else notable about running it in this deck, it has the built-in insurance policy on it that we can discard some cards, pay a little bit of life for mana, slam an indestructible counter on it. So that way, if we see a board wipe, we can save this guy. Rurik Thar can die, but you know what? That's fine. We can cast him again from the command zone. This thing's really cool. This thing is $30. It's a pricey card from All Will Be One. Recommend a proxy. Recommend printingproxies.com if you want to spend 87 cents instead of $30 on our friend Solfim here. Nikia of the Old Ways. Nikia of the Old Ways. Hello, everybody. I am BAGM. I am a video editor, and on live, we do live deck tech. If you want to see any cards talked about during the show for our Rurik Thar deck, put them in the chat. If I talk about them, we can see them in a Moxfield deck list. And if you want to vote on our commander tomorrow, you can check out the Discord. Those are all links in the link tree. This is Nikia of the Old Ways. It's a 5-mana Gruul creature, and it's a Centaur Druid 5/5 that says you can't cast non-creature spells. Whenever you tap a land for mana, add 1 mana of any type that land produced. 10 out of 10 would play this thing. Honestly, it's great. It's great. It's Aragorn. Okay, Aragorn. It looks like Aragorn is out of our color identity. Unfortunately, there are no Aragorns in Gruul colors, according to Moxfield. Sentinel. So Anthony Herbert says Sentinel. What is Sentinel? Sentinel. Oh geez. Oh god. I'm gonna need more info on Sentinel, please. Hey everybody, if you have a suggestion for our Gruul commander, please put it in the comments. Kiki says Mana Barbs. Thank you so much for hanging out with me over on Twitch, Kiki. I appreciate it. I am trying to grow that platform. If you would like to help BGM, please head on over to Twitch, hit follow, then maybe come back to TikTok. I know we're a little anxious to leave it right now. Mana Barbs is a 4-mana mono red enchantment, and it's got an old border, so I'm already nervous. This thing says whenever a mana is drawn from a land, it deals 1 damage to that land's controller. You know what? If we just want to punish our opponents out of the game in Gruul colors, we can do that with Ruric Thar and Mana Barbs right here. This thing is going to deal 1 damage every time somebody taps a land. It's great, actually. I don't think this effect is super game-breaking. It feels kind of fair to me. And it feels especially fair in a Ruric Thar deck where you can choose what you're casting. Depending on the matchup, I don't know. It's cool. I don't think this is broken. I like that it's $6. We see a lot of older cards that are like hundreds of dollars for some reason. I like that this one isn't. I wonder if it's had any reprints. Thank you, Kiki, for the suggestion. Pup Maestro says the thickest in the thicket. Thickest in the thicket. Thickest in the thicket is a Bloomburrow card. It's a 5-mana mono green enchantment printed in the Make Trash Do Smash precon, the Rakon Gruul precon. And this thing says when it enters the battlefield, put X counters on target creature, where X is that creature's power, and then at the beginning of your end step, you draw 2 cards if you control the creature with the greatest power, or tied for the greatest power. This thing's very cool. You want to have big boys. We have a big boy in the command zone. He's over here. This thing's cool. People are psyched on this card. I've seen it be really impactful in Commander's games. I would run it in a Voltron strategy because it kind of doubles the thing's power by putting a bunch of counters on it. I would run it in a Voltron strategy. It's also really good here. My only gripe with this card personally, in our Ruric Thar build, is that this thing is an enchantment and it's not a creature, and we want to run creatures for Ruric Thar and Ruric Thar triggers for ourselves. But other than that, this card's great, and a lot of people have suggested this card. People are very psyched on this card. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways! Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. That sounds like a green card. Uh-oh. Shaman, is it... Shaman, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Thank you, Nathan. I am BGM. I am a video editor and a streamer. And on stream, we do live deck building. If you have a suggestion for our Ruric Thar deck, please put it in the comments. If you want to see any of the cards that we talked about over here, y'all can check out the link tree for the Moxfield profile. Alright, so we're trying to find a Shaman of the Forgotten Ways. Shaman of the Forgotten... I'm sorry. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways is not coming up. Vaultborn Tyrant, though. A Vaultborn Tyrant. Vaultborn Tyrant is something that came off the big score sheet of Thunder Junction. This thing's $45, and it's a house. It's a 7-mana mono green house. It's $45. It's a 6/6 trampler, and whenever this thing or another creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 3 life and draw a card. That alone, we're gonna have a ton of big guys in our Ruric Thar deck because we want to run as little non-creature spells as possible because we don't want that trigger to be hurting us. This thing's great in a creature deck, especially if we're running big boys. This thing says, though, when it dies, it makes an artifact version of itself. It's great. It draws you a ton of cards. It gains you a bunch of life. It's $45. It's a great card, y'all. It also has the meaningful keyword trample on it. It's a good time. If you want to spend 87 cents instead of $45, recommend Printing Proxies. Goreclaw. So that last card, that Raptor we just saw, cares about power 4 or greater, and so does Goreclaw, which is our next suggestion. Thank you very much, Luke, on TikTok for the suggestion, and thank you, Rainbow Vomit, for the follow. I appreciate it. This is Goreclaw's Terror of Qualsisma. It's a 4-mana mono green bear legendary creature, and it's got 4/3. It says a creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 mana less to cast. This thing also says that whenever this thing attacks, each creature with power 4 or greater you control gets +1/+1 and gains trample until end of turn. This thing can slam the trample keyword on all your creatures. Trample is one of those keywords that ends games. Same thing with like haste and double strike. There's probably some other ones. Yeah, but trample, double strike, haste are kind of the game-ending combat keywords, at least in my mind. This thing gives trample to all your creatures that are big already and that will have more relevant trample effects because they're big. It also gives you a lot of mana. Saving 2 mana on big spells can often mean you're casting 2 big spells instead of a singular big spell on your turn. This thing's great. It saves you a bunch of mana, and it gives your creatures a relevant keyword. It's also $1.50. It's seen a few reprints. I like him a lot. Something, though, that I also find really fun. I love this card. This card is a team-up of Goreclaw the Bear that we just saw in the last card, and this character called Sirach from the Plane of Tarkir. This is a 6-mana mono-green legend from the March of the Machine set, and I love it. It's a trampley 6/5, and instead of just giving other creatures trample, this thing also gives them haste, and it puts a +1/+1 counter on them. It gives them trample, haste, and a +1/+1 counter. This thing's $10. It's great. I'm really glad I opened one. I also bought a single while it was still cheap. This thing's definitely worth a proxy to play test. I really enjoy this card. I would recommend it. Hey, Ethan! Alright, so I saw a Bear Umbra. It looks like Bear Umbra. Yeah, Blink Sama. I love Bear Umbra. So my major concern about running a Bear Umbra in this deck, obviously, it's not a creature. That's my only downside about running a Bear Umbra in a Heroic Thar deck. But this thing's great. It's been printed in a few Commander precons. It was originally printed in the Tuvasa Enchantments precon. It's a 4-mana mono-green aura with Enchant Creature.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Enchant Creature gets +2/+2, and has, whenever this creature attacks, you untap all your lands. This thing will often feel like it's helping you take multiple turns, especially if all your mana's in your lands. This thing untaps all your lands. It's great. You use all your mana on your first main phase, you attack with the Bear Umbra creature, and you would get almost another turn in your second main phase. Use all your mana again. It's a great time. Or if you want to untap your mana and pass the turn after that so you can hold up mana for interaction on other people's turns, this thing also helps a lot with that. I love this card. It's $8, and I almost have to tell you it's worth $8. But also proxies are valid, and I am a Printing Proxies affiliate, so that's Bear Umbra. Would recommend, probably not in Heroic Thar though. Basilisk Collar. So y'all really love running non-creature spells in your Heroic Thar deck. Basilisk Collar is I can't even fault you. Basilisk Collar is so cool, except that I have a hard time spelling it. Basilisk Collar is, the Basilisk Collar. It's a 1-mana colorless artifact equipment with Equip 2, and it gives the equipped creature lifelink and Death Touch. Death Touch means that if it touches a creature with combat damage while it has Death Touch, it will kill that creature. Lifelink means that you gain life equal to the damage dealt. It's great. It's a great card. It's got a bunch of different printings, so if you don't like the dog, you can get a not dog Basilisk Collar. There's a bunch of them. It's a great card. I wouldn't run it in Heroic Thar because Basilisk Collar is not a creature. What's a proxy? Asked Ethan. So proxies are fake cards that you can use to keep your expensive cards nice, or some people play proxies because they want to, and they're playing casually. Sometimes proxies are allowed in tournaments, especially in more expensive formats of Magic the Gathering, like, I want to say Vintage. Yeah, that's what proxies are. I'm affiliated with a company called Printing Proxies, so if you want to get some playtest cards, or you want to try out this here Void Winnower, and you want to make your friends really salty, but you don't want to spend $33, you can get a proxy at printingproxies.com for 87 cents. Void Winnower is not a card that I consider fun, really. I think you're being the bad guy when you play Void Winnower. Void Winnower is a 9-mana colorless Eldrazi 11/9. It's $33. And your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, and your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. There is an odd CMC commander. I think her name is Yannette. She's a Sphinx, and she's in Esper colors. This thing is a great card in Yannette. This thing is I hate this thing. Guys, I can't lie to you. I hate Void Winnower. I hate Void Winnower a lot, actually. I think it makes for unfun games, in my experience. Like, and also the thing about running Void Winnower is it only hurts your opponents. It only hurts your opponents, so it just makes your deck better in, like, a really powerful way. It's in colorless colors, so it can go in every deck, and I sure do have a few friends who love running Void Winnower. God, I hate this card. I hate this card so much. And it's always a surprise. I never expect Void Winnower, and it... Void Winnower upsets me. Great suggestion, though. Mr. Buzzfuzz! Hey, Mr. Buzzfuzz. Thanks for hanging out with me over on Twitch. If you guys would like to help me grow my Twitch platform and help me monetize my content a little bit, I'd really appreciate it if you guys on TikTok head over to Twitch, hit follow, maybe come right back to TikTok. Thank you guys for hanging out with me anyway. So, Mr. Buzzfuzz says Resurrection Orb. Resurrection Orb. Resurrection Orb is a 2-mana colorless $9 equipment artifact, and this thing was printed in the Warhammer 40k expansions. I'm sorry, Warhammer 40k precons. Equipped creature has lifelink. Whenever a equipped creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under its control at the beginning of the next end step, and it's an equipped for. So the total mana investment on this piece of equipment is 2 mana to cast it and 4 mana to equip it. For a total of 6 mana, you can give the equipped creature lifelink. That's a pretty relevant keyword. That can help you come back from a late game. And whenever the equipped creature dies, you get it right back. I love this thing. This thing just says that your creature has life insurance. I like this card a lot, actually. It gives the thing lifelink, so it kind of helps you stay alive. And it also maintains your board state. So if you want to block with that creature, you can gain life when it blocks, and then it'll come back to the battlefield, and then you can invest another 4 mana, and you'll have a recurable blocker. I like this thing a lot. This thing is $9, and I kind of want one. This thing is very cool. That mono black Necron deck that they printed in the Warhammer precons is so good, and it has so many fun little colorless artifacts in that Necron precon. Very cool suggestion. Who put that in there? Who put that in here? Mr. Buzzfuzz. I'm impressed, Mr. Buzzfuzz. Great suggestion. Maybe not in Rorik Thar, because it's not a... Y'all are just giving me non-creatures. We have not seen a lot of creatures. Except for Frost Ace, who says a Colossal Dreadmaw. So Colossal Dreadmaw is a bit of a meme card in the Magic the Gathering community. It's a 6/6 for 6 with Trample in the common slot. It's cool. There's a subreddit about Colossal Dreadmaw and all its different printings. It's very cool. He's very cute. We're gonna give him a little chin scratch. Hello, Colossal Dreadmaw. Yes, we love you very much. Okay, that's Colossal Dreadmaw. Luke says, Hahar, Loyal Bodyguard. Hahar, Loyal Bodyguard. I like Hahar. Hahar is a good little piece of interaction, in my opinion. He's a 2-mana legendary 3/2 human soldier, and you can sacrifice Halar at instant speed, and legendary creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain indestructible. I like Halar. Normally, effects like this where you sacrifice a thing and stuff gains indestructible, normally that's typically a white effect. I really like that this thing's in Gruul. I like that it's $1. You can usually find Halar hanging around and kicking around a bulk box at your LGS. He's a good time. Also, he's super impactful in Commander because you can activate him and sacrifice him at instant speed and protect your legendaries. Yeah, your legendaries. And in the Commander format in general, or at least in my opinion, inside the Commander format, because all Commanders are legendary, even if they're not creatures, legendary spells, since Commander has been super popularized, are just better in general, so more decks run more legendaries. This thing's great. You're probably running a few legendaries yourself, and this thing can probably do more than just save your Commander. I like this thing a lot. I like that it's cheap. He's also a man holding 2 flaming swords, and that's pretty cool too. I love this card. I also like its activated ability. Page X Cry says we gotta run Scrambleverse and Magus of the Moon. Alright, so we already got Scrambleverse suggested, so we'll talk about Magus of the Moon. Magus of the Moon is a little bit of a hate card. I don't hate it as much as its big brother Blood Moon, but this 3-mana mono red human wizard $9 2/2 says that non-basic lands are mountains. And when your non-basic lands are mountains in a multicolored deck, it probably means that you're gonna have a bad time. Your non-basics becoming mountains means that they just tap for red. So this thing is really good at shutting off 5-color decks in particular. I hate this thing. Honestly, this thing is the effect non-basic lands are mountains. That's the effect of a card called Blood Moon, and I hate that one even worse because it's hard to deal with because it's an enchantment instead of a creature. Excuse me. Omen Machine. Aaron Westerman says an Omen Machine. Hey everybody, I'm BGM. I'm a video editor and streamer, and on lives we do live deck building. Our commander tonight is Rorik Thar, and it was voted on in the Discord server. If you want to vote on tomorrow's live deck building commander, that's in the Discord server, and you can check that in the link tree. If you want to see any of the cards that we already talked about on live deck building, that's in the Moxfield profile on the dated deck list, and you can also see that in the link tree. Thanks for hanging out with me. I appreciate the 400 likes. Thank you guys. Omen Machine is a 6-mana colorless artifact for $1.50, and it says that players can't draw cards, and I hate that. At the beginning of each player's draw step, that player exiles the top card of his or her library. If it's a land card, that player puts it on the battlefield. Otherwise, the player casts it without paying for it, if able. I don't love that. So my favorite thing in a commander game is having agency over the way I resolve my spells and stuff. And this thing takes it away. I don't love it. There's also things you can play and layer with this effect that makes people unable to play the game entirely. And that's a bit of a bummer for me. I am not that kind of person, and I don't think that's a good use of people's time, in my personal opinion. So, is there anything to make a large boys cheaper? Yeah, so we saw Goreclaw. Goreclaw is cool. Goreclaw can make your 4 mana spells smaller. So Goreclaw, we saw a few cards ago. We're not going to spend a long time on Goreclaw. He's a 4 mana mono green 4/3 bear that makes creatures with power 4 or greater cheaper, and also gives creatures with power 4 or greater trample and +1/+1 on attack trigger. He's very cool. He can save you a bunch of mana. But we also saw from our friend AMS over on Twitch a Twin Flame Tyrant. Twin Flame Tyrant's rad. This thing just came out. It's a damage doubler. It's $24, and it has the most metal art. This thing is a 5 mana red dragon 3/5 flyer, and if a source you control would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent they control, you deal double. This thing's crazy. This thing is $24. It just came out in Foundations. It's a house. It's in the relevant creature type of dragon. All the dragon decks are going to want this thing. This thing's real good, y'all. We're going to give him a little chin scratch. Hello. Coochie coo. Okay, yeah, that's all. Twin Flame Tyrant's rad. He's pricey. Recommend a proxy if you want to play test him before you buy him. Maze of Ith. Yeah, I like Maze of Ith. I like Maze of Ith a lot, actually. I have a bunch of Mazes of Ith, and I play every single one of them. None of my Mazes of Ith live in a binder. If you guys have never played with a Maze of Ith before, highly recommend. This card can keep you alive for a few extra turns. This thing is a colorless land. It doesn't... Careful, Maze of Ith doesn't tap for mana. Maze of Ith says that you can untap untap target attacking creature, prevent all combat damage it would deal... and would be dealt to it that turn. It's great. So it can stop a Voltron commander if you can target it. It's a cool card. It can keep you alive for extra turns. That's been my experience with it. If you have a few extra turns, you might be able to turn a game around. It is a defensive card. It's also really fun to use if you're winning to like maybe save other players, or if you don't gotta use it for yourself, you can use it to save other people's against a threat. So you can keep them around long enough to maybe beat it down. It's very fun. I recommend this card. It's $9. It's a little pricey, but I think it's worth it. It's also very fun. Fangs said a Grim Reaper's Sprint. Grim Reaper's Sprint. It was printed in Duskmourn, I believe. Grim Reaper's... Oh no, it was from Fallout. It's a Fallout 5 mana mono red aura enchantment, and it says that the spell cost is cast if a creature died this turn, you enchant a creature with it, and it enters the battlefield. You untap each creature control, and you get an additional combat phase. The enchanted creature gets +2 and +2, has haste. It's a good card. It's 50 cents. It's from Fallout. It can get you an additional combat step. It's real good. You want to cast in your second main phase after you attack, and you kind of want to attack. I think this thing incentivizes you to attack unfavorably so that one of your things intentionally dies. That way you can get that cost reduction. I like it a lot. I imagine it would go really good in like a Jund deck that wants to be sacrificing its creatures anyway. I like this card. I also like that it's $1.50. Thank you very much for the follow, Fangs. I appreciate it. Anthony Herbert says that Resolution prevents all combat damage. Resolution. If Resolution is white, unfortunately, it won't come up. Yeah, so if it's outside of our color identity, it's not going to come up. Okay, so Frostace says a Petrified Woodkin. Petrified Woodkin is... Okay, Petrified Woodkin is a 7 mana mono green elemental 3/3, and it can't be countered. It has Bloodthirst X, and when this thing comes into play with X counters on it, where X is the damage dealt to your opponents this turn, it has protection from instants. This thing's cool. It can't be countered. We want to deal some damage. We can do that with Rothgar's triggers. Maybe someone tries to interact with our spell on our turn. We can deal some damage on the turn we cast. This thing's kind of cool. It wants to be cast in our second main phase for sure, though. It's kind of just a big boy. I like it a lot. He's very cool. He is kind of a win more card, in my opinion, though, because we already want to be hurting our opponents when this guy enters so he can get big. Big with that Bloodthirst trigger. Capped Evergreen over on TikTok says a Bane of Progress. Is Bane of Progress banned? Is Bane of Progress banned? It is not. Bane of Progress is a 6-mana elemental 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, you destroy all artifacts and enchantments, and you put +1/+1 counters on Bane of Progress for each permanent destroyed this way. He is $12, and he is an excellent card. This thing's amazing. If you have a way to blink this thing and you can keep wiping the board of artifacts or enchantments, that's amazing. I like this card. It's $12. It is a little bit pricey. Backup Apricot, thank you so much for hanging out with me over on Twitch. I appreciate it. If you guys would like to help support me, please head on over to Twitch and give me a follow. Maybe come back to TikTok after. Bane of Progress is great. It definitely helps you win games. It's $12. It's a little pricey. You can get it for 87 cents on Printing Proxies. It's a good card, y'all. Yeah, so unfortunately, minor downside about this guy. He will blow up your stuff too, but he'll get bigger off your stuff too. He's great. I've definitely lost to that card. It's definitely wiped me a few times. AGL says a Ragavan. Ragavan is a 1-mana mono red monkey. He's $35 right now, but he used to be $100. This thing says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token, you exile the top card of that player's library, you may cast that card this turn. You can also dash it out. When you dash it out for 2, you put it from your hand for 2 mana, give it haste, and it comes back to your hand at the end of the turn. This thing's cool. I've seen a mono-red Ragavan deck that just ran a bunch of swords and lands, and it played other people's decks, and it was very silly. It was a very silly mono-red Voltron commander. This thing owns other formats. I'm just a commander player. I don't know about other formats. But this thing's cool. It's $35. That's a lot. The art's cool, at least. The Chungus Among Us, 10 out of 10 username, the Chungus Among Us, says Savala Heart of the Wild. Actually, I pulled out a Savala Heart of the Wild to talk about in case we were light on suggestions tonight. Do I have it? Yeah, here's my Savala Heart of the Wild. In case we needed suggestions, I was going to pull it out to reference in case I needed a card to talk about. It's a 3-mana mono green 2/3. It's $6. It's a little pricey, but it's really good, and it can get us a ton of mana. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card if its power is the greatest among other creatures' power. You can also pay a green, tap it, and add X mana in any combination of colors, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. If we have our commander out with Savala, it's at least going to be 6. This thing's going to tap for 6 mana with our commander out. It's going to help get our commander out early. It's aggressively costed at 3 mana. It draws us cards. It can draw us multiple cards throughout a game, and it can make us crap tons of mana. This card's amazing. If you want to do like a mono green CDH build, run this lady. She draws you cards and she makes tons of mana. Centaur Vine Crasher. Centaur Vine Crasher. Centaur Vine. Okay. Centaur Vine Crasher. Can I not spell Centaur? C-E-N-T-A-U-R space V. Centaur Vine Crasher is a 4-mana mono green plant creature 1/1. It has trample, and when it enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the number of land cards in all graveyards. So even if you're not doing a graveyard land strategy, this thing could be relevant. Lots of people run Evolving Wilds, Myriad Landscapes, people will be cracking fetches. There's probably going to be a land in a graveyard at least. Whenever a land card is put to a graveyard from anywhere, you may pay 2. If you do, you return this thing from a graveyard to your hand. I like it. I don't know if I'd run it in Rurg Thar in particular, but if I was running it in like the Gitrog monster, this thing would be amazing. Anything that wants to sacrifice a bunch of lands, like Titania, mono green Titania would have a ball with this thing. This thing's cool. I like that it's 60 cents. I like that he's kind of hot. I'm not sure how I feel about him being a plant creature, but you know what? He's a vibe. Thank you for the suggestion. The Chungus Among Us says Galta Stampede Tyrant. Galta Stampede Tyrant is a 8-mana mono green $21 dinosaur. He's an elder too. He's a boomer dinosaur. This thing says that when it enters the battlefield, you may put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This thing is a little bit of a creature storm win con. If you can find a way to put your library into your hand and then cast this guy, you can shit out all the creatures from your library in a singular turn. This thing's crazy. This thing's absolutely coconuts. It's a great little piece. If you can get it to enter the battlefield multiple times, you can also shit out free creatures from your hands. It's great, y'all. It's 21 bucks though, but it's a good time. Wandering Archaic. Wandering Archaic is a card. Yeah, this thing's cool. So this is the 5-mana 4/4 avatar, and whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2, but if they don't, we get a copy of that spell. And you may choose new targets for the copy. I like the Wandering Archaic a lot. He is a little pricey at $8, but the thing about the Wandering Archaic is he gets you free spells. If people forget to count their mana, they're going to be giving us free spells off this Wandering Archaic. Another thing about whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, if they are doing, like, I don't know, storm strategies, this thing will have multiple triggers on a turn, which is very cool. I like him a lot. I don't own one of him, and I don't see him played a lot, but he's really good. The back sucks. I've read the back a few times, and I'm just going to spare you guys. If you guys want to check out this card, it's on the Moxfield page. Ilharg the Raiseboar. Ilharg the Raiseboar is a cool card. He is from the War of the Spark. He's a 5-mana boar god. He is $4. He's a 6/6 with trample. And whenever this thing attacks, you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. Return that creature to the hand at the beginning of the next end step. And when this thing dies or is put into exile from the battlefield, you may put it onto your owner's library. 3rd from the top, so the boar keeps coming back. He's 4 mana. He's a good time. Excuse me. He is $4. He is 5 mana. $4, 5 mana. He's cool. He's a relevant body for 5 mana. He's a 6/6 trampler for 5 mana. And he can pop out free creatures from our hand, which is great because our deck is going to be full of creatures because we don't want to be taking too many Rorik Thar triggers. We can only take 7 or 8 of those before it's cartons for us. Osier Kazlem says the Chungus Among Us. Osier Kazlem. Osier Kazlem. Is that the green one? Green one's cool. I bought a single of this when it came out. It's a 5-mana Trampley God 6/5. And whenever this thing deals combat damage to a player, you reveal that many cards from the top of your library and you slam down a creature from among them and you put the rest on the bottom in random order. If it dies, it becomes a bit back over for 3 mana and you activate only if you control 10 or more permanents. It's great. It has trample. It's a Trampley 6/5 for 5 mana. That's really aggressively costed. This card's really cool. I imagine this could be a really fun mono green commander as well. He's a good time. I like him. Alright, and then we saw a Zachnus 2 says the Last March of the Ents. Last March of the Ents is rad. I love the Last March of the Ents. It's worth the 6 damage, especially if you have Purphoros. Oh yeah, it sure is worth the 6 damage if we have Purphoros. This thing's amazing. This is an 8-mana, $23 sorcery. It came out in Lord of the Rings, and it's really good, yo. I really love this card. I was lucky enough to open one. You draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control. Then you put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So you draw a bunch, and you slam a bunch of free creatures. This thing's amazing. It's pricey at $23. If you want to pay 87 cents instead of $23, check out printingproxies.com. This thing's really cool. It's great. It is a win more card, though, because you need to have a chunky guy to have this thing do much at all. So you need to have a creature with big toughness. You cast this thing, you get a bunch of cards, you slam creatures onto the battlefield. This thing's a good time. 10 out of 10, would recommend, would run a proxy. Jolene, the Plunder Queen. I like Jolene. Jolene, the Plunder Queen. Jolene, the Plunder Queen is a Gruul 4-mana human warrior lady 2/2, and whenever a player attacks one or more of your opponents, that player creates a treasure token. And if you would create 1 or more treasure tokens, you create those tokens plus an additional treasure. You can also sacrifice 5 treasures, put 5 counters on Jolene. Jolene's great. Jolene doesn't do anything alone, though. She's a 4-mana 2/2 without any keywords. She does help your opponents. Your opponents do like to see Jolene because your opponents can ramp off of Jolene when they attack your opponents. And if you would create treasures, you make more treasures. It's great. It's a very effective treasure commander. Lando says an Elysian Caryatid. An Elysian Caryatid is this thing. I like this thing! This thing's a common. I love this common. I don't run a lot of commons, but I run this thing. This thing's real good. It's 40 cents, and it can tap for 2 mana if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. It taps for 2 mana or 1 mana. It's great. It's great, y'all. It's 40 cents. The art's a vibe. 10 out of 10. Play this card. This card's really good. So we talked about Basilisk Collar already. Basilisk Collar is cool. I'm not sure if we'd run it in our Rorik Thar deck, because our Rorik Thar deck wants to run creatures. We don't want to be taking Rorik Thar triggers. Basilisk Collar, though, is rad. It's a 1-mana colorless artifact, and it says that the equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink with Equip 2. Railway Brawler. Railway Brawler. What is a Railway Brawler? It sounds like it's from Capenna. Nope, it's from Thunder Junction. This 5-mana, $10 mono green Rhino Warrior with Reach and Trample says that whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is its power. This thing, off the rip, if your creatures enter after this thing, they have double power and toughness. It's crazy. It does it in the form of +1/+1 counters. We can run Hardened Scales-like effects. There's a bunch of creatures with Hardened Scales-like effects on them that can put even more counters on this thing, or put more counters on stuff when this thing triggers. You can also plot it and cast it for free after it's plotted. This card's amazing. I like it. It's from Thunder Junction. It's a house. There are so many mono green mythics that are just houses all by themselves. This thing's it's really fun. It's fun. It's great for +1/+1 counter builds. Braindead Cat says a Thunderous Velocipede. Thunderous Velocipede. Thunderous Velocipede is a... Okay, this thing's strange. Oh, this is a new card. I think this is from Aether Drift. Okay, so we have a 5/5 trampoline 3-mana vehicle crew 3 here. And other vehicles, each other vehicle you control enters with an additional +1/+1 counter on it if its mana value is 4 or less. Otherwise, it enters with 3 additional +1/+1 counters on it. Cool. So if we were running vehicles, this thing could be very cool. It itself is not a creature, so we will get Rorik Thar triggers off it. A little bit of a bummer. But thank you for sharing your Aether Drift spoilers with us. I have not seen this thing yet. Very cool suggestion. And more +1/+1 counter synergy. Oh, the Chungus. Xenagos. Xenagos is rad. I assume you mean God of Revels. Yeah, Xenagos, God of Revels. X-E-N-A. Ghost. Xenagos. Godagos. Xenagos, God of Revels, is a 5-mana Gruul legendary enchantment creature god. It's a 6/5 with indestructible, and as long as your devotion to red and green is less than 7, he ain't a creature, he's just an enchantment. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, another target creature you control gets haste and +X/+X, where X is that creature's power. Xenagos gives a thing haste and doubles its power. It's crazy, y'all. I had a friend who had a Xenagos deck, and it shot out like 1 or 2 specific creatures that were like big, chunky, meaty boys with relevant keywords. He doubled their power and toughness, and he just swung them in. The thing that's kind of wordy about Xenagos, or the thing that's like only a little bit tricky about Xenagos, is that his trigger can't target himself. He has to target another creature. He's great, though. How much is Xenagos? How much you... Xenagos, $11. That's not too bad. Especially for an older Theros card. An older Theros god. A lot of those things are pricey as hell. Paulo Rose says a Helm of the Host. Hello, everybody. I am BGM. I'm a video editor and streamer, and we do live deck building. If you want to suggest a card for our Rorik Thar deck, please put it in the comments. If you see it over here, it'll be put into a Moxfield deck list. If you want to vote on our commander for live deck building tomorrow night, there's a Discord server. That's in the link tree as well. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Let's talk about a Helm of the Host. This thing is a card synonymous with Commander. It's a $12 colorless artifact, and it lets us make multiple copies of our commander because the copies that Helm of the Host make are not legendary. Something I like to talk about when we talk about Helm of the Host specifically is its mana investment. It's 4 mana to cast it, and it's 5 mana to equip it. So you do need to dump a total of 9 mana into your Helm of the Host before you can even get 1 trigger. And you do need to do it in your first main, or before that, because this thing triggers at the beginning of combat. It's really good. The Chungus, thank you, Chungus, for following me. I appreciate it. You have a very clever username. This thing's great. It is a great way to make multiple copies of your commander. If we make multiple copies of Rorik Thar, that means that our opponents really can't cast non-creature spells or they die immediately. Any damage doubler that we're applying to the Rorik Thar trigger makes this thing almost lethal immediately. Anything that jumps it from 6 to 12. We saw a City on Fire, which triples damage, and that'll take it from 6 to 18, and that's absolutely coconuts. Decimate. Decimate is a fair card. It's a powerful, fair card. I'm going to talk about it in a second. I need a drink. Decimate is a 4-mana Gruul sorcery. You destroy target artifact, target creature, target enchantment, and target land. The thing about Decimate, you can't cast Decimate unless you have a valid target for all of it. You need to have a target for all the words on this card, or you cannot resolve it legally. So in a way, Decimate can be really restrictive. Like, if you're down to a 1v1 in a commander game, and you're really trying to ride out that game, and they just don't have an enchantment, or they just don't have an artifact, you can't cast Decimate on them. But when you do manage to resolve a Decimate, and you pick the same person for all the modes, it's like a little board wipe for 4 mana. It's a really good spell. I like it a lot. Nick says, okay. I butchered those names. Sorry, Nick. This thing, the Honored Physician, is a legendary 3-mana human with an activated ability. You tap it and put target creature card from your graveyard on top of your library. Activate this ability only during your turn before attackers are declared. Okay. Interesting. Honored Physician. Nick, this is interesting. What are we supposed to do? Okay, so I guess we could... Maybe if we were in an aristocrat strategy, I would feel a lot more jazzed about this creature. As it stands right now, though, I'm a little confused. This thing, it's definitely cool. It's got an activated ability. We could untap it and really capitalize it. You can activate it only during your turn. That makes me a little sad. Before attackers are declared. I don't get it, y'all. I don't get it. I don't get it. I unfortunately don't get this one. Mastodon. 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 What the hell is a Mastodon? Is it a Mastodon or it's a Mastodon? Damn it. Can I get a spell check on Mastodon, please? Mastodon. Dang. Rhythm of the Wild, suggested by Frost Ace. Rhythm of the Wild is a rad Gruul card. So there are not a lot of non-creature spells I would consider running in a Rorik Thar deck, but this one I could. Because of this thing's low CMC, we can likely get it onto the battlefield before we have Rorik Thar. Hopefully, so we can dodge Rorik Thar's trigger. This thing says that creatures spells you control can't be countered, and non-creature tokens you control have Riot, which means when they enter the battlefield, they either get +1/+1 or Haste. Haste is a game-ending keyword. Haste is one of the most powerful keywords. This thing can give your creatures Haste as a flat-out. It gives it to tokens, too. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't give it to tokens. It says non-tokens. At least that's fair. This card's great. It's $5. It's really good. It says that your creature spells can't be countered. I don't see a lot of counters in my current play group, so I don't play around counters at all, ever. That first line's just gravy. To be honest with you guys, if I was playing Rhythm of the Wilds, I would just forget that first line exists, and I'd probably just let my stuff get countered. Because I'm not good at matching. Andrew Paradis says Elvish Piper. So Elvish Piper is very fun in a creature deck, and if you can get it out early, you can start tapping your Elvish Piper, you're gonna get a bunch of free guys. This thing's a 4-mana mono green spell. It's $1.50, and you can pay a green and you can tap it, and you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. It's real exciting. It's $1.50. It's 4 mana. It got a bunch of reprints. This card's pretty cheap. I'm pretty sure you can find this guy in a bulk box. We're looking at the Lord of the Rings art right now. Elvish Piper is a well-known card. People use Elvish Piper to cheat out big, spicy creatures all the time. It's a fun card. I play it. Nick says a Goblin Sharpshooter. Goblin Sharpshooter and Basilisk Collar Shooter. Okay, so Goblin... I hate that combo. Okay, Goblin Sharpshooter is a 3-mana mono red goblin, and it doesn't untap during your untap step, and whenever a creature dies, you untap your Goblin Sharpshooter. And you can tap it to deal 1 damage to any target. So the way you can wipe the board with a Goblin Sharpshooter, you can slam a card called Basilisk Collar on it, or anything that really gives it Death Touch. You give the Sharpshooter Death Touch, You tap it, you deal 1 damage to something, and because it has Death Touch, the thing dies. It's great. It's really good. I really hate that combo. It also, when the thing dies, you untap it, so you just keep going. I don't think it's particularly fair or fun. I don't particularly run it. It ain't for me. But you know what? Live deck building isn't really about my taste. On live deck building, I want to know what you guys would play in your Rorik Thar builds. So, let's see. What do we got next? Live deck building with the biggest and gayest. Yes, I am the biggest and I'm BGM, everybody. I'm a video editor. I do live deck building on stream. Voidless Void suggested a Ansrag the Quake Mole. So we saw Ansrag already, but I'm a big fan of Void. Thank you for hanging out with me, Void. Ansrag the Quake Mole is a 4-mana not Golgari, it's Gruul. We're in Gruul colors tonight. This thing is a 4-mana 8/4 Mole God, and when this thing becomes blocked, you get an additional combat step, and you can pay 7 mana to make sure that it does get blocked, so you can get that spicy additional combat step. It's very cool. It's great. It's $5. It's from the Murders of Karlov mana set. Every time I see this card, I just want to point out that it's a 4-mana 8/4, and it's legendary, so it can be your commander. This thing in the command zone will go absolutely ham. You give it some equipment, some auras, this thing is going to be a threat. You won't even need to activate it if it's your commander, because people are going to be motivated to block it anyway, because 8 commander damage is a lot. You take 8 commander damage 3 times, you die. I am so glad I don't see any of these guys in the command zone. Thank you, Void, for the suggestion. Finn! Hey, Finn, how's it going? Finn says hit. Wandering Archaic, Wandering Archaic. So we saw Wandering Archaic a few cards ago. It's a 5-mana colorless creature. It came out in, not New Capenna. It came out in Strixhaven. And it's rad because it lets you copy your opponent's instants and sorceries if they don't pay 2 mana when they cast them. It's a very fun card. Here's a Boartusk Liege. It's in my favorite frame treatment, which is the hybrid frame. This thing's 50 cents. And look at his boy. He's a beautiful. Let's give him a chin scratch. Who's the good boy? Who's the good boy? Okay. He's 4 mana. He's in Gruul colors. He's a trampoline 3/4. And other red creatures you control get +1/+1. And other green creatures you control get +1/+1 too. This thing's great. So if your creature's red and green, it gets +2/+2. This thing itself is a trampoline 3/4. That's a relevant body. It's 4 mana. It's a creature. It's a little... You know what? In this deck, it doesn't even feel like that restrictive of a cost because of the hybrid mana symbols. I like this thing a lot. I like him a lot. I like the Liege cycle a lot. I think my favorite Liege, though, of all the hybrid Liege cycle is the Orzhov one. That one's very cool. Majestic Genesis. Majestic Genesis. Frostace, you keep suggesting me cards that are not creatures for our Rorik Thar deck. You're trying to get us killed, Frostace. Alright, Majestic Genesis is a 8-mana mono-green sorcery. This thing looks like it was printed in Baldur's Gate. It's a $2, and it says that you reveal the top X cards of your library, where X is the greatest mana value of commanders you own on the battlefield or in the command zone. You may put any number of permanent cards from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. This thing says that we draw 6 cards in Rorik Thar, and we can slam down some free permanents. Who knows? Because Rorik Thar incentivizes us to play creatures so we don't get Rorik Thar triggered ourselves. Creatures are permanents. We can slam down a bunch of free permanents with this thing. I like it. I like that it's $2. Normally things like Genesis Wave, which I think this thing is trying to be evocative of a Genesis Wave, are a lot of mana and they're also a lot of money. I like that this thing is a lot of mana but not a lot of money. Cons, you're only ever going to draw 6 cards off this thing. For Rorik Thar, unless if your commander is lower CMC. Mon Dronen Shaman. Mon Dronen Shaman. Thank you, Chicken Boo, for the suggestion of the Muldronen Shaman. It's a human werewolf shaman. It's 4 mana. It's red. It's a 3/2, and it gives us a trigger at the beginning of each upkeep, not just ours. This thing triggers at everybody's upkeep. And if no spells were cast last turn, we transform our shaman, and our shaman becomes this 5/5 werewolf. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, this thing deals 2 damage to that player. And at the beginning of each at the beginning of each upkeep, if a player casts 2 or more spells, you transform it back into its human version. I like it. I like it. I like it is what, okay, maybe I don't like it. So it's 80 cents. It's a human werewolf shaman. So the thing about the werewolf cards is the werewolf cards really shine in a werewolf deck. And because the werewolf deck has the support to flip it into the better version of the creature. I like the art. I really love the motif of the glowing red eye, and then it also has it as the werewolf. I like that. I think it's well designed. I don't know if I would run it though, because even on it does give us triggers when our opponents cast spells, so it is a way to punish them. I don't know though. I don't know if it's for me. Cool suggestion though. If you guys want to see any of the cards that we talked about, the Moxfield link is in the profile. Defense. Oh, Joshua, shame on you, Joshua. Shame on you for suggesting a Defense of the Heart. Defense of the Heart is a card that ends games. It's typically a CDH card. It's $11. There's a few different printings. I'm pretty sure the printings all hang out around $10. It's a 4-mana colorless. It's a 4-mana mono green enchantment. And during your upkeep, if one or more opponents control 3 or more creatures, you sacrifice Defense of the Heart. You search your library for your combo pieces. You slam them onto the battlefield, and you win the game. That's been my experience of Defense of the Heart, in my opinion. It's cool. It's definitely a CDH card, in my opinion. You can find 2 creatures that combo off immediately when they enter the battlefield. You can find them with Defense of the Heart, and you win the game at your upkeep. Cons about Defense of the Heart, or I guess the kind of weakness of it, is if it's not being put down with Flash, you do have a whole turn to get rid of it before they can pop it. I've also seen with Defense of the Heart, people, because it has that stipulation that your opponents have to have more creatures than you, they'll run like an altar that they can sacrifice creatures to at instant speed, and then at their upkeep or at the opponent prior to them's end step, they'll sacrifice all their stuff so they can get Defense of the Heart, the trigger, slam their 2 combo pieces on the battlefield, end the game. I personally don't like this card for those reasons, because it does reward that playstyle of just grabbing your combo pieces and putting them on the battlefield. It is a very popular card, though. Elder Scale Worm. Frostace says an Elder Scale Worm. Hello, everybody. I'm BGM. I make MCG content all over the internet. Thanks for hanging out with me tonight. We do live deck building, and tonight we are building Rurik Thar. We're building Gruul creatures. If you want to see any of the cards we talked about, you can check out the Moxfield link. That's in the profile. If you want to vote on tomorrow's Commander for Live Deck Tech, that is in the Discord, and that is also in the link tree. Thank you very much for the follow, Nick. I appreciate it. This is the Elder Scale Worm. It's a 7-mana mono green 7/7 trampler. And whenever this thing enters the battlefield, if your life total is less than 7, your life total becomes 7. And as long as your life total is 7, or as long as you have 7 or more life, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 7, reduce it to 7 instead. It's $6, and I like it. I like it a lot. It doesn't have ward, it doesn't have hexproof, it doesn't have indestructible. It's just a tramply big boy. Also, I like the worm design. I like that he's kind of pretty. He's a pretty worm. Who's a good worm? We gotta give him a chin scratch. Okay, he's cool. He's a tramply 7/7 for 7, and he helps you stay alive by keeping your life total at 7. This thing might be fun just to hang back and not risk doing combat with it, because it can save you. It prevents your life total from becoming less than 7. I like that a lot. Yeah, you know that Eldrazi, I think it was Sire of the 7 Deaths or something, that came out? This feels like the original 7 card. Possum over on TikTok says an Itlamok, Cradle of the Sun. Itlamok. Well, let's try Cradle of the Sun. Cradle of the Sun is easier to spell than the word Itlamok. Yeah. Oh, wait. So this is Growing Rights of Itlamok. Do we have an Itlamok Cradle of the Sun? Yeah, that's the flip phone. Okay, so here's Itlamok. Or, excuse me, Growing Rights of Itlamok is a legendary mono-green enchantment, and when it enters the battlefield, we reveal the top 4 cards of our library. We can put one of them that's a creature into our hand, and we put the rest on the bottom in a random order. This thing also gives us an end step, that if we have, I think, 4 or more creatures, if you control 4 or more creatures, you transform the Growing Rights of Itlamok into this thing called Gaia's Cradle, spoken Cradle of the Sun. This thing's crazy. You tap for green mana for each creature you control. But if you don't have any creatures, this thing's even better than a Gaia's Cradle because it still taps for green if you ain't got no creatures. This thing's great, y'all. It's wonderful, especially if you're in a creature build. There are not a lot of non-creature spells I would consider running in a Rurik Thar build. This is one of them. It gives you a little bit of card advantage. It finds you a creature. It puts it in your hand off the top. It's also creature selection, so if you reveal multiple good picks, you can find your favorite. Among those, slam it into your hand. So it's a little bit of card advantage, and it also ramps you when you have 4 or more creatures. And because we're running a lot of creatures, because we don't want to have Rurik Thar triggers for ourselves, we're incentivized to run Growing Rites of Itlamok. Also notable about running Growing Rites of Itlamok inside of a Rorik Thar deck is it's 3 mana. If we have it in our opening hand, or if we draw it before we get our commander out, we can have it on the board when our commander's there, and then we can miss the Rorik Thar trigger. I like this card a lot. I think it's really good. I don't know if it's worth $6. I would say this card is worth a crisp $4. Possum says an Ulasht the Hate Seed. Ulasht the Hate Seed. So, funny story, MTG TikTok. Ulasht the Hate Seeds. There is a creator on MTG TikTok called Cranko. He has a little goblin motif with a crown on it, and I met Cranko at Command Fest in Tampa a few years ago, and he was giving out free cards, and he gave me a free Ulasht the Hate Seed. Check out Cranko. He's a good vibe. This thing is a 4-mana Gruul creature, and it's a Hellion Hydra. It's a Hellion Hydra 0/0, and it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each other red creature you control, and a +1/+1 counter on it for each other green creature you control. You can also activate this thing for 1 mana, remove counters from it to deal 1 damage to a target creature, or to make sapling creature tokens. He's a vibe. He wants to enter after you already have a bunch of creatures, so he can get some counters, and then you can use those counters to deal damage and also make guys. He's a fun little Gruul tokens build. I like him. He's been a little outclassed by power creep, but you know what? The vibe, I mean, the art is a vibe. I can't even tell what's going on. Like, Tentacle fans, here's your commander. Hello, everybody. Okay, so Blank. Blank. All right, we're gonna talk about Vorinclex. I saw it and I was avoiding it, and I'm like, oh god, I don't want to talk about Vorinclex. Vorinclex is slutty. So we're gonna talk about a Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. And while it loads, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about myself. I am BGM. I am a video editor and a streamer. We do live deck building on stream. If you want to suggest a card for our commander Rorik Thar, put it. If we talk about it over here, we put it into a Moxfield deck list. That's in the link tree. If you want to vote on tomorrow's commander, that's in the Discord on the link tree. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. If you want to help me monetize my content, head on over to Twitch, follow me, and then head on back over to TikTok. We don't want to leave TikTok. I understand. This is Vorinclex Monstrous Raider. It's a 6-mana mono green creature, and it says that if we would put counters on something we control, we put twice that many counters on it. And if our opponents would put counters on things, they get half the amount of counters. It is a 6/6, and I think it has trample haste. It's great. My one gripe about Moxfield as a website is that sometimes when you click on a card, it comes up with the unreadable version automatically, and I think that's bad website design. Yeah. But other than that, this card's a vibe. This card itself is $50, and this is the version that nobody can read. I imagine the other versions are hanging out around $60. It's a great card, especially if your deck cares about counters. Stankboy says a Vexing Shusher. Vexing Shusher is great. I'll enjoy Vexing Shusher. Thank you very much, AJ, for the follow. I appreciate it. I'm trying real hard to hit 10,000 on TikTok to monetize my content. Vexing Shusher is a 2-mana Gruul Goblin Shaman. Thank you, Stankboy, for the follow. This spell can't be countered. It has an activated ability. You pay a singular mana, and target spell can't be countered. You can use this ability when your spells are getting countered, and you can stop it. Something else notable, if you notice your friend is really leaning into a counterspell strategy, you can pick yourself up a $7 Vexing Shusher, and then you can save everybody else from their counterspells. And I think that's really fun to do with the Vexing Shusher. This thing is $8. I'm sorry, this thing is $7. That's a little pricey for me. My playgroup doesn't have a lot of counter spells right now, so I personally don't run this thing anymore. I do have one living in a binder for when I found that awful, awful matchup. It's a cool card. If your friends love counter spells and you don't like playing with them, this thing could fix that. Joshua Cooley says a Shadow of the Warp. So Shadow of the Warp is a great card. Shadow of the Warp is an excellent card. It's from the Warhammer 40k expansions. I think it's a 4-mana Gruul enchantment, or it's either a 3-mana Gruul enchantment. It came out in the Tyranids precon from the Warhammer 40k precons. And this thing, I think it deals 2 damage whenever someone casts their first non-creature spell. And I think it does something for our creatures too. We're loading. Hopefully it'll come up in a moment. Shadow of the Warp. Shadow of the Warp. Uh-oh. Did we lose connection? Oh no! Okay. Bummer. Yeah, Shadow of the Warp is a Gruul enchantment, and I don't know why it's not loading. Let's reload the page. Shadow of the Warp. Shadow of the... Okay, I don't know why our page isn't loading. I'm sorry, guys. If this doesn't come up soon, we're gonna end the live early. I don't know what's wrong with my connection. Can you guys see and hear me? In the warp. Oh, man. This is fucking... This sucks. Okay, come on. Alright, you can load. You can do it. I believe you. Moxfield is taking longer than expected. I can see that, Windows. Alright, guys. Okay, let's head on over here. Alright. So, guys, I'm sorry. I don't know what's wrong with my computer. It's not loading the Moxfield page. If this doesn't come up, we're going to end the live here. I want to thank you guys so much for hanging out with me tonight. I am Bigger Gayer Magic. I use green screen effects to make silly little Magic the Gathering content all over the internet. Tonight, we built Rorik Thar. If you want to see any of the cards we talked about in our Rorik Thar deck, in the viewer suggestions, head on over to Moxfield. That is in the link tree. And if you want to vote on tomorrow's deck tech, that is in the Discord, also in the link tree. Thank you guys for... Come on, Moxfield. We're going to try one more time to load this Moxfield page. Oh, my God. Come on. All right, guys. I'm going to log off and start trouble... Oh, is it coming? It's not coming. All right, guys. I'm going to troubleshoot this. Thanks for hanging out with me. If I can't get this done in the next half hour, we're going to call it a night. If I get it in the next 2 minutes, I'll be right back on. I hope you all have a great night, and I hope you all draw the appropriate amount of lands in your next game.